With Golden Gauntlet about to start, I thought that it would be a very good time to talk about the best deck in Marvel Snap and how to beat it and what characteristics it has that make it beatable and what characteristics it has that make it the best deck in the game. What's interesting to me about this conversation is if I say Invisible Woman First Steps is the best deck in Marvel Snap, a lot of people are going to think of a lot of different things. My personal favorite build is the Twin Blade build because it just has so much to do, it's basically never taking a turn off. But as the metagame has evolved, I've changed that build up into a different, more metagame focused version of Invisible Woman First Steps, which looks a lot more like this. And basically all of the decisions made in this video will make more sense once you've watched the video because you can see this deck list and you can understand what I've done, but I think you need to understand why. And in order to understand why, it's important to look at the fundamentals of Invisible Woman First Steps decks and talk about what weaknesses they have, what you can do about them, how to beat them, and how to perfect them. At baseline, most Invisible Woman First Steps decks are built around at least Invisible Woman and a Prodigy to copy Invisible Woman. This interaction gives end of turns 4 triggers on the final turn of the game. Presumably, you are activating both of those cards on the same turn. Those 4 triggers do things like make Havoc into 16 power or Thena into 12 power. They can also make Marvel Boys repeat a ton of times, gaining a lot of power out of those as well. And you see various fusions of this card with different backbones, because as long as Prodigy is at least relevant to whatever other game plan you're doing, he'll be able to pull double duty and bridge you from your Invisible Woman high roll into a normal mid-range deck a decent amount of the time. But what characteristics do all of these share? Well, they want their cards to be face up on the board a lot of the time, and they want them to be where they put them. Positioning is quite important for decks like this. Prodigy can only copy Invisible Woman if it's in one specific spot on the board. A card like Havoc, being a big guy that goes in a lane, needs to go in the lane you're actually trying to get its 16 power in, and not in the lane you already have Athena that's gaining 12, or a Sunspot that's gaining 8. That kind of stuff is really important, and it's how you want to approach trying to beat this deck. There are a couple of baseline cards that I think are obviously good against this deck, and then a couple that maybe go a little bit overlooked. Once you start thinking of this deck as something more analogous to move, bounce, or discard, it becomes a little bit easier to understand why Supergiant can be so good. Especially the move bounce comparison, I think really holds up, but even when you think about discard executing a Dakin line, that is very similar to how the Invisible Woman First Steps decks plays. The difference is that the Invisible Woman decks can hybridize into other things. They are asking less of a commitment from you for that level of output, and they just sort of add that play line to whatever deck they decide to go in. Supergiant is excellent at disrupting this for a variety of reasons. A Supergiant on 5 is actually one of the most dangerous things that a deck like this can see, because it totally messes up the Invisible Woman game plan, because a lot of the Invisible Woman game plan is playing the cards that gain a bunch from Invisible Woman triggers on the final turn of the game. This is basic Marvel Snap. Those are your biggest guys. They are extremely cheap. Your competitive advantage is that you get to decide where to allocate massive amounts of points on the final turn of the game, much like a move bounce deck would do. Supergiant says Havoc doesn't actually trigger on that final turn of the game if you use Supergiant on 5. Just doesn't happen. Havoc reveals when the game is already over. There are none of those. Thena, in the case of a Supergiant, doesn't actually see any cards being played on that turn. She doesn't happen either. None of that stuff happens. And so you end up neutering the power base of the deck. But that's not all. Supergiant also allows your tech cards, like Shadow King, for example, to reveal after the game has already ended and hit things like Thena. But that's not all either. One of the more hidden weaknesses that a deck like this can have is Negasonic. And not just Negasonic, but really anything that rolls downhill in a meaningful way. And here is where it diverges pretty strongly from the move bounce comparison, because move bounce can play around this kind of stuff because it has such confusing final turns. The final turns of a deck like this are not confusing. There are multiple lanes that will have one spot left, and you will know that there is a Thena or a Havoc going in that spot. You blow that card up, it does not matter anymore. And that kind of stuff is what really makes decks that are able to go downhill powerful, or at least competent at dealing with this level of output. Obviously, a totally unmolested version of the normal Invisible Woman deck is going to output way more points than most things are going to be able to deal with. You can try to beat them on points, but genuinely, they can output hella level points some of the time. You're just going to have to eat that. Interacting by moving downhill seems to be the strongest thing that you can do. Something like Negasonic allows you to snipe that 16 power Havoc, allows you to snipe that thing that would be copying a Prodigy. So for example, if they have an Invisible Woman down sitting in her own lane, you can prevent the Prodigy ever actually happening if you have priority on turn 5 by blowing up the card that they play before the Prodigy in order to make sure Prodigy copies Invisible Woman. That kind of stuff is what makes Negasonic such a useful counter to this. I cannot say enough good things about the idea of Juggernaut against this deck. Being ahead and juggernauting their power cards, which again have to be in relevant lanes if they want to win, is so incredibly strong. I feel like about half of the losses I take with Invisible Woman decks are just somebody had priority and juggernauted me. And this again speaks to the characteristics of the Invisible Woman deck. The Invisible Woman deck plays from behind a lot. Here's the move bounce analogy, right? But where move bounce is very likely to fill up lanes, or at least have the ability to try to play around Juggernaut in that way, even though they almost certainly never do that because of the way they move stuff around, this deck simply cannot. There are very few ways for it to prevent Juggernaut from screwing it over. It will get screwed over by Juggernaut. It is always going to have to think about Juggernaut on those final turns of games, and it does not have the ability to make that not be a factor in the games that it plays. Juggernaut moving downhill with a coherent points package is largely the best option I've found for dealing with what this stuff does. When you add Negasonic in, you have a coherent points package with Juggernaut and Negasonic, you roll downhill, and you can really start to deal with a deck like this that plays from behind with only a few cards playing on the final turn of the game. At a certain point, you add Supergiant into that, and you are actually in the range of hard countering this. If we see a lot of Supergiant in Golden Gauntlet, a lot of that will be down to the fact that this combination of cards is so immensely powerful against Invisible Woman. But that brings us back here. Remember when I said, oh, a Negasonic deck with Juggernaut in it that rolls downhill and has a lot of points in it? Yeah, you could just do that with Invisible Woman. And I think that that is the major lesson that I took from the Safety Blade deck that is running across ladder right now. I tried it, I messed around with it, I ended up making it a little bit more combo-y, but the real thing it wants to do is just be ahead. And spoiler alert, you don't have to go for the X4 final turn Invisible Woman if you think priority is really going to matter in an Invisible Woman mirror. You could just take priority and then Negasonic Juggernaut them on the final turn of the game, and yes, that can cost you a little bit some of the time, but it is a legitimate strategy that you have access to, and it will matter in these mirrors some of the time. Generally speaking, though, everything I laid out was, if you want to win these games against Invisible Woman decks, Juggernaut and Negasonic while rolling downhill are the important pieces that you have access to that can really make that happen. And so what I've done is I've sort of spliced them in to the already dominant Invisible Woman structure so that I have what is, in my experience, an Invisible Woman deck that is able to beat the other Invisible Woman decks. And this is sort of where I'd be at for Golden Gauntlet most likely. This is the kind of thing that I think is likely to be very good. The problem with bringing this to Golden Gauntlet is that it's such an obvious best deck, and the counter Supergiant is so good against it, that you might end up just having to bring a deck that hard counters the counter, at which point you start wondering, why am I not bringing in the counter in the first place, or looking elsewhere, like to something that maybe beats both of them, like maybe a Clog with the Merlin on the downtrend kind of thing. Just some generally interesting things to think about. But on the whole, I think Invisible Woman genuinely is the boogeyman of this format. I think that while there are powerful ways to interact, Juggernaut and Negasonic are powerful ways to interact that can be adopted by the Invisible Woman deck itself. And the fact that this was successful for me is actually indicative of the power of this shell. So to me, this is the deck that will define the Golden Gauntlet, in much the same way that Thanos defined the first one. Everyone knew about it. Everyone was ready for it. It still did well. Here we're in a similar situation. Everyone knows about it, everyone's ready for it, but we don't know how well it's going to do. As always, I've been KMBest. You have been phenomenal. We're going to jump into some gameplay, and don't forget to check out the Golden Gauntlet, which will be on Saturday, late at night, and honestly pretty close to my normal streaming time slot. Thank you so much. Ew, disgusting. Legal. Can I get like a Fantastic or a Surge here? It would go along. Horrifying.
Clear for takeoff.
Interesting. That wasn't actually for Negasonic Trauma. It's in case we wanted to Prodigy it. Like, low-key, kinda. Low-key, kinda, baby. Low-key, kinda. Morning, Devilish. Morning, Nick. Yeah, we played in that order in case we wanted to prod them. Mirrors are miserable. Yo, low-key, I'm kind of thinking that it's supposed to be a Negasonic over Stardust. Low-key, I'm just thinking about that a little bit. A fucking invisible woman goes away? Holy Christ. That is batshit. Yo, Husky with the raid. Much appreciated, my man. I mean, don't they have a giant Goliath here? They lose 4. They play effectively 10 power. They go to 27. We have an additional, what, 5 here. So we're at 19, 27. Okay, well, maybe we have the 50-50 here, right? Go middle. Thank you. Please work. Please work. Please work. Please. That is fine. That is fine. It is the big Goliath in the middle. We love it. Okay. Also, I can't do math. Oh, no, I can do math. And we would have lost. Cranked on entering. Oh, man, I didn't yell at Marvel Snap about this. Marvel Snap was in here earlier. And I need to yell at them because I once again started as low as I've ever started for, as far as I can tell, absolutely no reason. And I hate them for that. Mysterio. Okay, so this is a Sasquatch coming down. And we're going to assume the real one's over there. They're still here lurking. My cat's meowing. Meow. Meow. Hi. Oh, what a baby. What a baby. Dude, hear me out. Oh my god. Has anyone ever been as fucked as they just got right there? That's brutal. That's unreal bad for them. Holy shit. I mean, that's just the most painful thing that anyone has ever had to deal with. Yep. Stardust replace? I don't know, dude. Rust. I get it. You get strong guy down, but I don't know why you do that turn unless you know I'm playing the jug, is sort of what I'm getting at. Like, you have plenty of turns to get strong guy down later. All right, I'm getting turn 1 snapped. I don't know what this means, but I'm assuming it means something. I have a bunch of really good cards, though, so I'm going to stick around. Yeah, sure. Agatha the shit out of me, my guy. I'm rooting for you. Nice. A surge. Nice. I'm a little suspicious of the way this went down. So we're going to leave that up for a turn and make a different play here. Oh my god. Real? Get shit on Ghost Rider. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Couldn't have had anything that was even close. We shouldn't have had anything even close. We should have been DED dead. It made a play that lost to pass. I mean, yeah, but it's not really fair to be like, oh, it lost to pass when it's like it loses to pass with a sun spawn. Jay. Oh. That is pretty unfortunate. Rosor, thank you for the tier 1. It is incredibly appreciated. If they actually got what I think they have under there, I am the most fucked man of all time. Okay, we're good. I was horrified that it was somehow going to be Cosmo, Brood, and also a Surfer in here.